Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Monday, November 3rd, 2025. My dear friend Ray McGovern will be here with us in just a moment. How do the Russians view the war in Ukraine? How do they view threats from the United States? But first, this. History tells us every market eventually falls. Currencies collapse. And look at where we are now. 37 trillion in national debt. Stocks at record highs defying gravity. So what happens next? Groceries, gas, housing, everything's going up. And this dollar, it buys less every day. When the system breaks, your stocks won't save you and your dollars won't either. But one thing will: gold. I've said it on my show for years. Gold survives collapse. Central bankers know this and billionaires know it. That's why they're buying more. Is it too late to buy, or is it just the right time? Call my friends at Lear Capital to find out. Ask questions, get the free information. There's no pressure, and that's why I buy my gold and silver from Lear. And right now, you can get up to $20,000 in bonus metals with a qualified purchase. Call 800-511-4620 or go to LearJudgeNap.com today. Ray McGovern, welcome here, my dear friend. Thank you for accommodating my schedule as always. From your understanding of the Russian public, and of course you have the advantage of knowing the language as well as the culture and the history, is the special military operation popular in Russia, unlike, say, the Vietnam War, which was immensely unpopular in the United States?
Well, it was, especially due to the fact that the Russian citizens, as well as ethnic Russians, were being killed willy-nilly in the Donbass. People like John Mearsheimer, I asked him at a public forum, we all agree that the Russian attack on Ukraine was not unprovoked, but did they have any choice? I mean, had they run out of options? Mearsheimer, without blinking an eye, said no. Putin did everything, including the Minsk Accords, trying to make it so that he would not have to invade Ukraine. And in the end, he had no choice. The shelling of Ukrainian Russian stock people in the Donbass went up geometrically, starting on the 14th of February. OSCE diagrams show that. It went up from about 500 to 1,400, 14,000 actually, shellings. And these are Ukrainian army shellings with our 155 millimeter howitzer ammunition into Ukrainian villages, killing Ukrainians of Russian-speaking Ukrainians.
Well, this is really unforgivable. How do Zelensky's people even justify this? The government killing its own people because they are culturally Russian and Russian speakers, but they're as Ukrainian as the government is?
It's a schizophrenic thing, Judge. Ukraine has always been very divided between the Slavic-leaning people in the east and the Western-leaning people in the west. Now, the Western-leaning people around Lvov and other places in Western Ukraine collaborated with the Nazis. I mean, they were happy to do in their Slavic enemies. So the place is completely divided, and the U.S. took advantage of that in February of 2014, when there was a relatively pro-Russian president of Ukraine, Yanukovych, and he was overthrown. He was overthrown on the Maidan. And, one thing that has come out from Lavrov and from Putin is that Obama called Putin. He was in Sochi at the Olympics. And he said, look, don't worry about it. We got this all taken care of. the Germans and the French are overseeing a peaceful transition. Yanukovych is going to go away for a while. He'll come back and we'll have delayed elections. Don't worry about it. At the same time, Biden called Yanukovych. No problem. Next day, a bloody overthrow of what was left in Kiev. Yanukovych had to flee. So, if these people seem to think they were diddled, well, if they don't think that, I don't know what diddled means.
Can you view what the Ukrainians were and are attempting to do in the Donbass as a form of ethnic cleansing? They want to get rid of the ethnic Russians, even though they were born in Ukraine and are Ukrainian citizens?
Judge, after the coup in February of 2014, the coup regime decided to go after all those people who would not submit to the coup. Those included the Crimeans. Now, you know that a month later, the Crimeans voted by 90% to rejoin Russia. It also pertained to the people in the Donbass. And John Brennan shows up in Kiev, not very well known, although it has been publicized. And of course, he says, look, we're going to support you as long as you need our support. We will give you intelligence cooperation up to kazoo, and we'll have militaries. Just wait. And they played that out from 2014 until 2022. We know the story. And again, I would just refer to Mearsham, who predicted 11 years ago that if NATO kept trying to get Ukraine into NATO, this would eventually destroy Ukraine. And of course, we were leading them down the primrose path, as John also said. He deserves great credit for having predicted precisely, sadly.
John's a great man. Zelensky himself, wasn't he born as a Russian speaker? Didn't Zelensky himself speak Russian into his adult years?
Yeah, he was a Russian, native Russian speaker. He had to learn better Ukrainian when he came into. Look, he was put in there by oligarchs. Those oligarchs were in very close contact with our men in Kiev and in Washington. He was an actor. He was a comedian, for God's sake. Well, it's not funny anymore. They put him in this position. Right. And all of a sudden he decided, well, maybe I am able to be the president of Ukraine. And also worthy of note is that his freedom of action is tightly circumscribed by the pro-Nazis or the pseudo-Nazis that actually have dominant influence now in Kiev. And that's what the Russians are going to hang around to clean up. They've already done a pretty good cleanup of the Ukrainian army. Once the army falls, it won't be long before the pro-Nazis in Kiev will see the light and move to their villas in southern Italy.
Wow. Putin, of course, has known of the dangers to Russia since 1999, when the Czech Republic and Hungary and Poland all together, all in one day, joined NATO.
Yeah, and of course, this was against all the promises that had been made as early as George H.W. Bush, for God's sake. Now, he sent James Baker to Moscow in February. It was February 1st, 1990, for God's sake. I had just retired 6 weeks earlier saying, McGovern, Russia has fallen apart. George H.W. Bush can be depended on to seek peace from Lisbon to Vladivostok. Way to go, Ray. You can retire now. And I did in January. Now, what happened? Oh, Baker made a promise. It's recorded in all kinds of diplomatic notes. He said, look, if you Russians accept a reunited Germany, and I could just see Gorbachev and Shevardnadze, reunited, that'd be swell. What's the quo for this quid? Well, we will promise not to move NATO 1 inch to the east. Well, there goes that promise. NATO doubled in size within 10, 15 years. And now we have continued attempts to get Ukraine into NATO. against with Mearsheimer, Kennan, even Kissinger warned this would be the death knell for U.S.-Russian relations. And if you don't care about that, that's one thing. That sells a lot of weapons. But if you do care about that, and you care about international security and don't want to be nuked to death in the end of civilization, then this is really important. What's interesting, Judge, is that when it became clear to Putin that he couldn't get any Western statesman to listen, not any of the presidents, not even Obama, he said, look, okay, we understand you won't listen. And so we're not going to build a ABM system or, go down that path. They don't work, frankly. We're going to do other offensive systems that will do a runaround here so that whatever sophisticated ABM systems you create, we can move around. And that's why you got Buravestnik. That's why you got Poseidon. That's why you got Oreshnik. And they have come online now. Putin said this in 2016, and in 2018, he advertised it in his show and tell during his State of the Union address, March 1st, 2018. Look it up. Those systems now that he showed videos of are now online. And if you will, the strategic balance has been rebalanced in a way, but not in the way that the U.S. expected. And, these things are brand new. The interesting thing is that this should come as some revelation to Trump. This was on the record. People should have told him, hey, this is what's going on. See if you can work out a deal before we blow each other to smithereens.
Where do you think there is more fear? The Western fear of the Oreshniks or the Russian fear of American tomahawks? Or am I mixing apples and oranges here?
Well, the tomahawks are dead. Just 2 weeks ago, Trump said, look, we're not going to give any tomahawks to Ukraine. They take a long time to get trained on them. We're not going to shoot these things. They have to be shot. Shot is what the word you use. They have to be shot by Americans. We're not going to do it. So forget about it. Now, what's interesting, Judge, as you know, Pete Hegseth recently, 3 days ago, said, well, we have no problem. We have no problem with giving these kinds of missiles, Tomahawk, to Ukraine. The notion that we don't have enough of them, that's wrong. We got enough of them. So what the hell is going on? Here's the defense secretary taking the opposite position from the president. This shows that there's a lot of internecine struggle going on in Washington. And in this case, I hope that Trump is able to prevail.
Here is President Trump over the weekend on Air Force One saying no tomahawks. Cut number 2.
Will your administration provide Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles? Is that something that you're not considering that?
No, not really.
This is really on Friday.
It could happen. I could change, but at this moment, I'm not.
Right? He's being fair and honest. It could happen. I could change my mind, but at this moment, the answer is no, and I'm not considering it. Tell your Secretary of Defense. Wait a minute. He doesn't have a Secretary of Defense. He has a Secretary of War. Whatever Pete is calling himself this week, tell him.
Well, Judge just points up that as the Russians have taken to saying, Trump is not his own man. He doesn't have complete freedom of action. They're being still very sympathetic to him. They say he's under all kinds of severe pressure, not only from the Europeans, those coalition of the brain dead, but also within Washington. So we understand that. We're willing to wait, sotto voce. We got this thing won in Ukraine. They're going to finally have to come to their senses. We can wait. We're in no rush. We're still open to a summit. Let them decide when they're ready to talk.
Before the president went to the Far East last week, did the CIA sit down with him and tell him how vital the rare earth minerals are that China has and how we can't get them from anywhere else on the planet?
I don't know, Judge, but if it's Secretary of Commerce or Secretary of Treasury, some of these highfalutin guys didn't know that. I mean, my God, that's symptomatic of their lack of knowledge of the real world. These are rare earth minerals, they're real world things. And as Alistair just said earlier this morning, the Chinese have a stranglehold on them. And without them, we can't do all kinds of things we want to do, including in the military sector. So was whether or not the CIA or the National Intelligence Director briefed Trump on this, I mean, if he hadn't been told this by all these people who put it in tariffs and all this other crazy stuff, well, that's a mark of how uninformed he is. And that can be really dangerous when it's a big surprise to him that the Buravestnik sails around the South Pole and that the Poseidon is ready to be mounted on submarines now, 4 of them, to cause tidal waves and worse on any shore. First pick will be UK and second pick will be the US. I'm not saying the Russians are actually going to do that, but they have that capability. That's an incredible second strike capability. Trump needs to be informed. Here's a little anecdote. I was talking to Ted Postal early this morning, and he said, it's not a surprise to me that the presidents and the secretaries of defense are not well informed. As a matter of fact, when I pointed out to the Defense Department that the Russian early warning system was grossly deficient, and they wrote all kinds of papers, I met Bill Perry, Secretary of Defense under Clinton, and I said, Bill, you know about this, don't you? And he said, well, about what? And I showed him the slides, and he said, the first time I saw it, the acting Secretary of Defense. So what happens is the National Security Advisor can be a bottleneck and can prevent anyone, including the Secretary of Defense. And Bill Perry was a good guy, all right, from knowing which end is really up. That's really dangerous.
I'm going to run a clip for you, and I apologize ahead of time. It's the senior senator from South Carolina, in my view, absolutely at his worst and most irritating and inaccurate. However, at the very end, he says something tantalizing. We have run out of bombs, without saying it now, because we've given them all to Ukraine. So this is long, tortuous, Lindsey Graham at his worst, but listen to what he says at the end. Chris, cut number 8.
Speaking of Donald Trump, he said, hey, so he's a great president. If you don't believe me, just ask him. What happened with me and him was we found common ground. I've come to like him and he likes him, and that changed our entire relationship. But he did the Golan Heights thing. Remember, Ron? He said, I called him up, where you at? I'm with BB on the Golan Heights. He said, I didn't know we were in New York. No, that's another Golan Heights. We're over there. He recognized the Golan Heights by tweet because he understood you can't give it back to Syria because they'll use it to kill you. He recognized Jerusalem as capital of Israel. Why? Because if you got a problem with that, take it up with God. He's the guy that did it, not Trump. So I just want to say, I feel good about the Republican Party. I feel good about where we're going as a nation. We're killing all the right people and we're cutting your taxes. Trump is my favorite president. We've run out of bombs. We didn't run out of bombs in World War II.
Killing all the right people, running out of bombs. What the hell is he talking? And laughing about it as if he were doing stand-up. And I guess the audience appreciated it. What the hell is he talking about?
Judge, I try not to use abusive language.
Right, right.
But when he talks about the Golan Heights, for example, that was seized and occupied by Israel together with the rest of the occupied territories in 1967. That was in June. In November, there was a unanimous UN Security Council resolution requiring Israel to withdraw from the occupied territories. Unanimous. The US voted for it, okay? 1967. Now, in his wisdom, Trump decided to give Golan to the Israelis. Well, who the hell does he think he is? This is international law you're talking about. And if you're talking about occupied territories, it's not a matter of Israel having a right to exist. It's a matter of occupied people having the right to resort to all means necessary, including violence under international law against the occupier, and the occupier has no recourse under international law to move against or to genocide those people who are occupied. So here is a guy from South Carolina. People out there in Palestine, they don't look much like us. And, he reminds me of his predecessors, General Westmoreland, who thought that the gooks were all second-rate people, of people like Jimmy Burns, who is the Secretary of State under Truman, and who was the only one that said, Mr. Truman, you go ahead and use those bombs in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, because those people, they don't deserve to live because they attacked us and so forth. All those people were from South Carolina. I don't know, maybe it's in the water there in South Carolina, but please don't show me any more videos of Lindsey Graham. I try to be a more peaceful person.
Well, and a lot of the chatters, the folks that write to us during the show, are saying the same thing. It is repellent, but this is a person who gets to whisper in the president's ear every time they share a golf cart together, which they apparently do once a week, and this is very dangerous. But I was interested. I don't know if you know the answer to this. I was interested in what he said at the end. We're running out of bombs. Is the implication that American military gear is low because we have given so much of it under Donald Trump 1, under Joe Biden, and under Donald Trump 2 to Ukraine?
That's very clear, Judge, and prominent administration officials have as much as admitted that. The basic shell for artillery is a 155 millimeter shell, okay? I trained with those. Actually, today, November 3rd, is the day I entered into active duty as an Army infantry officer at Fort Benning at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And we were training on 155 millimeter shells, and there weren't any there. They were all in Key West. That's how close we came in Cuba. So anyhow, that same shell is being used today, except there aren't any of them. The Czechs said, well, we'll buy some, and they couldn't find any to buy, except the price was jacked up so high that they couldn't buy. So yeah, it's true. They're out of ammunition, and the Tomahawks are not going to be given to them. And if the Germans try to shoot these, what do they call them? Taurus missiles. I mean, I fear for the Germans, because the Russians can very easily retaliate in ways that the Germans will not forget. And after all, if the Germans haven't learned lessons from history about how strongly the Russians feel about infringement on their borders and in their land, well, they've learned nothing, and maybe that's the case with Chancellor Merz.
As if things could not get worse. The peace president said yesterday on Air Force One, we are about to invade Nigeria. Cut number one.
We're on Nigeria. Just wanted to ask you, do you envisage US boots on the ground? Airstrikes?
Could be. I mean, a lot of things I envisage, a lot of things. They're killing record numbers of Christians in Nigeria. And they have other countries very bad also. You know that part of the world, very bad. They're killing the Christians and killing them in very large numbers. We're not going to allow that to happen.
Now, he gets that from Pete Hexa, You know?
I guess he does. There are 5,000 Marines off the coast of Venezuela. I wonder how many are headed for Nigeria. And I wonder when Congress will get involved. We still have a Congress, Ray McGovern?
Well, Judge, you've written eloquently about the dissipation of the separation of powers. These three branches of government that I learned about 75 years ago, for God's sake, they no longer exist in reality. The executive has taken all the power with welcome giving up by the Congress. Now, if the Congress can't pass some sort of legislation requiring the president to obey the Article 1 provision where only Congress has the right to declare war. As you know, Judge, Jefferson, Madison, they were really intent on making it clear that emperors or presidents could never declare war. It had to be the people, the House of Representatives of the people of the United States of America, that would vote to declare war. And that's been abused up and down by Democratic as well as Republican administrations. But the scandal is that we no longer have any winter soldiers in Congress except for a precious few, and none of them have the guts to stand up to an imperial president and say, that's enough. We're going to reassert the right that our predecessors have sort of squandered. We're going to insist before we give you any money for Venezuela or Nigeria to protect those Christians, okay? We're going to insist that you come to us and get permission. Now, that's what's necessary. It's all very clear in the Constitution. And, well, will Congress do that? Probably not. So who is it up to? It's up to us. There never has been any other. We have to get out there. We have to make sure that our Congress people and the others realize that they can't have impunity for just deferring to the imperial presidency.
So eloquent, Ray. Thank you, my dear friend. So meaningful and eloquent. I'm sorry I aggravated you with Lindsey Graham, but it brought out the best in you, Professor McGovern. Thank you so much. All the best. We'll look forward to seeing you with Larry at the end of the week.
Thanks, Judge.
Sure. Have a great week, Ray. And the aforementioned Larry is, of course, Larry Johnson at 11:30 this morning. At 1 this afternoon, Professor Francisco Rodriguez from Venezuela. He is from Venezuela. He'll be coming to us from Denver, where he now teaches. And at 2 o'clock, our friend Kyle Anzalone commenting on the good professor. What's going to happen in Venezuela? How soon before the U.S. invades? Does anybody believe the president when he says he has no plans to invade? We'll talk about it. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.